Hey there boys and girls, Lucky here and welcome back to another CSGO video. So today we're going to talk about horizontal aim as well as vertical aim in order to improve your crosshair placement. So I'd say, let's get right into it. Alrighty, so one thing we have to get out of the way first is basically the camera position within the player model. Usually people think it's somewhere like behind the weapon or within the chest, but it's actually right here at head height, meaning that if you're aiming at an enemy at head height, you're always gonna be aiming at an enemy at head height by just like moving to the left and right, you see? Still head height, head height, head height. This guy back there, also head height. It's basically translating over. However, this only works on a flat surface, for example, like right here on cache. As soon as you get a slight slope like that in, the head height is gonna be a little bit different, so you gotta take that into consideration. Now, in another video, I also talked about your arm movement versus your wrist movement, and basically that your arm is therefore your look around sensitivity and trying to track extremely close targets, like right here the corner of this container, I'd say. And then of course your wrist movement is for fine adjustments, like tracking in between those heads and trying to kill the guy then. And you want to be able to combine both of them. I'll also leave a link to the video in the description down below. Now let's talk about how horizontal movement and vertical movement are going to affect your aiming. It's more natural for the human body to go horizontally. You probably already noticed that when you're aiming right here and just trying to go left and right, it's very easy. But as soon as you're, for example, let's say right here, and you have to aim down, and down here, it's going harder. First of all, the reason for that is that, as I already mentioned, when you're not on the same height as the other guys on a flat surface, you constantly have to adjust for the your crosshair placement for the head height, and you cannot just go simply left and right. You also have to go up and down. Now, the other factor for that, of course, is that having the left and right movement with your arm like that is a lot easier and more natural, meaning that you kind of use your elbow as a swivel point, like an anchor. You can just move your arm like that, and it's going to be very easy. Now, when it comes to recoil control, of course, you also have to do something down vertically, like just pulling down. And since your skin is flexible, you can, of course, do that very easily to some extent. However, once you're, for example, let's say you're in B, holding right here, up here, and you're just firing down, and you have to adjust like those levels, you have to move your arm more and more in order to compensate for that. And of course, this means that it's going to be more unnatural, because just like, for example, taking something like the mouse and then putting it to your body is a very natural movement. But however, like putting something away is more like a rough movement, something like you would throw a punch. So it's only natural that your horizontal aim is going to be better than your vertical aim. Another reason for this is basically when you're using your horizontal aim like that, you just have to use your wrist as well as your arm, or only like one of them. However, as soon as you're using your vertical aiming, you have to push your arm kind of back and forth in order to compensate for the height. And then on top of that, you also have to compensate for the left and right movement, which is the horizontal aiming. So just kind of having that knowledge should help you to somewhat identify why you're having issues with like that kind of aiming. So now you might say, okay, thanks for the info, that's very nice, but how is this going to help me with my crosshair placement? And it's going to be more of a minor tip. This video is really more about putting out knowledge and explaining things, how they work. So essentially what is going to happen, if we compare, for example, a high sense user versus a low sense user, what a high sense user does is he usually only uses his wrist, which is again, killing your wrist. You're gonna get like an injury, you're gonna have to have like surgery, and it's really bad for you. So essentially, he can do that when he's using a high sensitivity, just by swifting it up and down using high sense, and he can easily compensate for that so that he does not have to use his arm. However, that's basically what you want to train. I talked about that in the arm versus wrist aim movement, and that's basically an extension for that. So I talked in there when you're, for example, aiming at this corner. You want to be able, when you're up close, to do that with your arm like that. Of course, when you're further away, you want to do that kind of with both your arm as well as with your wrist. And if it's very long away, you can just do like wrist movement and be fine with that. And that's basically where the rest of your arm comes into place. Because now you also want to be able to do that from different heights. And usually, height is giving you an advantage. Because, for example, if you're back here, you're only exposing your head, you can fall down easily. Usually, height is always better, the height advantage. Or the high man advantage, or however it's called. So you actually want to make proper use of that. However, you do not want to sacrifice your potential aiming skills, since you've only ever built up your horizontal aiming. So you want to work on your vertical aiming as well. Same as it was for the arm versus wrist episode, where I talked about do not only use your wrist, combine it with your arm movement. And depending on the area you're kind of aiming at, it can be a lot better then. So essentially, for example, as I said before, a high sense user can just do all of that and just use his wrist, which is bad for his wrist, and he's gonna be inaccurate. Even if he thinks he's gonna be accurate, you're always more accurate with a lower sense, something between 500 and 1500 EDPI. That's also in between what all the pros are using, and it's gonna be a lot better. Now, essentially, the small tip that I'm giving you guys is that you should not get stuck on your mouse pad. Many people are kind of doing like this and kind of like that, and those are all unnatural movements, and the more unnatural it becomes for a body, the harder it gets for you to actually properly execute your aiming or just anything else that you want to do. So this might sound a little weird, but lifting your mouse, like readjusting your mouse, helps a lot with that. Just by, for example, you aim here and aim and then switch to this side. So what do when you're going to check highway now? Do you keep continue like this and just aim here and then continue like right here? No, of course not. You're going to readjust your mouse. You lift it, you reposition yourself so that you only ever have to do like smaller movements that you can properly control. Same goes for like your vertical movement. You want to kind of lift your mouse on top, like just do quick movements like that in order to be only then able to, again, use your horizontal and basically your underarm right here and wrist movement more efficiently to set yourself up properly. This can be kind of hard when, for example, guys are rushing in right here and you have to aim right here and then down there and maybe under you, but it's still very easily possible. The most effective tactic right here is also, as you can see, my mouse here is quite far up on my mouse pad. You almost never have to aim up like that, or better said, you have to prepare yourself depending on the position you're in. If you're up here, there are no enemies up there. So just aiming down like this, having the mouse up here and being able to pull down all the way to still aim is the way to go. So you really want to be a little bit more aware of your surroundings. And again, if you're just doing it right here, you can still like have only your flex of your skin in order to do that without any problems. Now, this also again works for the other side. You just kind of position yourself up here and then use the flex of your skin in order to compensate for that. That's still very easy. The only real map where you're gonna have a little bit of problem with that is essentially Nuke, where you have like very high up on railings or rafters and you're shooting down. So this can be a very difficult thing. Alright, so I think that's pretty much all for now. This video was more about just giving out general knowledge instead of giving like very specific tips and tutorials to follow. It's more about giving yourself the information so you can reflect on yourself as well and kind of critically ask yourself what are you doing wrong and basically what you could be doing better. So I hope this kind of did help you there in a way or not or another. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all for now. I hope you enjoyed the video, and luckySkillFaker out.